The sun hung low over the jagged peaks of the Chiricahua Mountains, painting the desert floor in strokes of crimson and gold, as if the earth itself were bleeding from a fresh wound. Elias Kane rode his weary mare through the arroyo, his Stetson pulled low against the glare, dust caking his weathered boots like a second skin. He was no outlaw, no gunslinger chasing glory or gold, just a man adrift, his heart hollowed out by the fever that had claimed his wife and boy 2 winters past. The frontier had swallowed them whole, leaving Elias with nothing but echoes in a Colt revolver that felt heavier with each empty mile. He whispered apologies to the wind, promises he couldn't keep, as he crested the ridge and stumbled into the hidden valley where the smoke of unfamiliar fires curled like accusing fingers toward the sky. That was when the arrows whistled past his ears, silent as serpents striking. Before he could draw a breath, let alone his sidearm, rough hands yanked him from the saddle. His mare bolted into the scrub, leaving him sprawled in the red dirt, surrounded by a circle of Apache warriors, their faces etched with the fierce lines of a people who had learned to trust no white man. Their leader, a towering figure with braids streaked silver and eyes like polished obsidian, stepped forward, Chief Nitch, guardian of the Mescalero lands. Elias raised his hands, palms open, his voice cracking like dry timber. "I mean no harm, I'm just passing through. Water, I need water for my horse." But the warriors bound his wrists with rawhide, their grips unyielding as the desert stone, and dragged him toward the heart of their encampment, where the judgment of the elders awaited like a storm on the horizon. The village nestled in the shadow of a sheer cliff, tippets of tanned hide fluttering in the hot breeze, children peeking from behind their mothers' skirts with wide, curious eyes. Elias was shoved to his knees before a semicircle of the tribe's council, their faces a mosaic of sorrow and rage. Whispers rippled through the gathered people like wind through mesquite, stories of broken treaties, of villages burned, of kin lost to the relentless tide of settlers pushing west. Chief Nitch stood before him, his deerskin vest adorned with the quills of eagles, a necklace of turquoise beads blending like tears. "You ride our lands uninvited, white eyes," the chief intoned, his voice a low rumble that carried the weight of generations. "Your kind brings death on horseback. Speak your purpose, or the spirits will claim you before the sun sets." Elias swallowed hard, the metallic tang of fear on his tongue. He thought of Sarah's laughter, of little Tommy's chubby fists clutching his suspenders, and the ache in his chest sharpened to a blade. "I got no quarrel with you, Chief. Lost my way after a storm up north. My family's gone, taken by sickness, not bullets. I'm no soldier, no rancher stealing water or grazing cattle on your grass. Just a ghost looking for peace." The warriors murmured, their hands twitching toward knives and bows, but Nitch held up a hand, silencing them. He circled Elias slowly, like a hawk eyeing prey, then nodded to an elder who stepped forward with a gourd of water. Elias drank greedily, the cool liquid a fleeting mercy, but it did little to quench the fire of dread building in his gut. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the camp, the trial unfolded in the ancient way of the people. Witnesses came forward, scouts who had tracked Elias's prints across sacred springs, women whose gardens had been trampled by stray hooves in the night. Each accusation landed like a stone in still water, rippling outrage through the assembly. "He carries the mark of the bluecoats," one warrior spat, pointing to the faded army surplus jacket Elias wore, bartered from a trader in Tucson. "His horse fouls our streams," Elias protested, his voice rising in desperation, but the words fell on deaf ears. He saw it in their eyes, the cumulative weight of raids and reservations, of promises whispered by Washington men and shattered like brittle clay. In their gaze, he was not Elias Kane, widower and wanderer, he was the embodiment of every betrayal the land had endured. Night fell swiftly in the valley, stars pricking the velvet sky like the eyes of ancestors watching from above. Torches of ocotillo branches flared to life, illuminating the chief's face in flickering amber. Nitch raised his voice, addressing the tribe in the melodic cadence of their tongue before turning to Elias. "The council has spoken. You will join the bones of those who came before, scattered to the winds as a warning." A collective breath held, then released in murmurs of grim approval. Elias's knees buckled, the rawhide biting into his skin as guards hauled him toward the edge of the camp, where a shallow grave had already been dug under the watchful moon. He thought of Sarah's last words, "Be kind, Elias, even when it hurts," and a sob tore from his throat, raw and unbidden. This was no heroic end, no blaze of glory, just a forgotten man, dust to dust, in a land that cared for neither. But then, from the throng of women and elders, a figure emerged, slender and poised, her dark hair cascading like a raven's wing down her back, adorned with a single eagle feather. It was Awinida, the chief's daughter, her name meaning fawn in the old tongue, though there was nothing fragile about the fire in her eyes. She was 19 summers old, her skin bronzed by the sun, her deerskin dress embroidered with the intricate patterns of corn maidens and thunderbirds. The camp fell silent as she approached, her bare feet silent on the packed earth, the torchlight catching the silver concho belt at her waist. Nietzsche's brow furrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing his stern features, but he did not bid her stop. Awinida halted before her father, her gaze steady, then turned it upon Elias, who knelt there, head bowed, awaiting the inevitable. The air thickened with anticipation, the crackle of flames the only sound. Awinida drew a breath, her voice clear and resonant, carrying across the valley like a prayer on the wind. "He saved my brother," 4 words, simple as river stones, yet they crashed through the tension like a sudden rain, soaking the parched ground of judgment. Gasps rippled outward, warriors exchanging glances, elders leaning forward with hands clasped. Elias lifted his head, confusion etching lines deeper into his face. Saved her brother, he had no memory of such a deed, no tale of heroism to cling to in this his darkest hour. Nietzsche's eyes narrowed, his voice a whip crack. "Daughter, speak plain, what madness is this?" Awinida did not flinch, she stepped closer to Elias, her presence a shield against the encroaching shadows, and in the firelight, he saw the faint scar along her forearm, a thin white line like a crescent moon. 2 moons passed. During the green moon when the wildflowers carpet the canyons, she began, her words weaving a tapestry that held the tribe captive. "My brother, Taza, only 10 summers, wandered too far chasing a jackrabbit. The flash flood came without warning, the arroyo swelling like an angry spirit. He clung to a mesquite root, the waters roaring black and hungry below. I heard his cries from the ridge, but the current was too swift, I could not reach him." The camp leaned in, memories of lost children stirring like ghosts among them. Awinida's voice trembled now, not with fear, but with the raw edge of gratitude long unspoken. "I ran for help, but the warriors were hunting far afield. Then, from the mist of the storm, a rider appeared, not one of ours, but a white man on a bay mare, his hat sodden, his face streaked with mud. He did not hesitate, he spurred his horse into the torrent, rope in hand, and lassoed the branch where Taza clung. The waters tugged at him, pulling horse and man alike, but he held fast, inching backward until he could haul my brother to safety." Taza coughed and shivered in his arms, alive because of this stranger's courage. Elias's mind reeled, fragments of memory surfacing like bubbles in a disturbed pond. The storm, yes, the blinding rain that had turned the trail to slurry, forcing him to seek shelter in the canyon. The boy's cry, faint over the thunder, pulling at something deep within him, a paternal instinct he thought buried with his son. He had acted without thought, without question of tribe or tongue, only the primal urge to save a life teetering on the brink. The boy had scampered away, wide-eyed and wordless, vanishing into the scrub as Elias collapsed against his horse, drenched and drained. He had ridden on, assuming it a fleeting mercy in a merciless world, never dreaming their paths would cross again under stars such as these. The revelation hung in the air, a bridge spanning the chasm of suspicion. Warriors who had moments before gripped their weapons now lowered them, their posture softening like yucca after frost. An elder, her face wrinkled as canyon walls, nodded slowly. The spirits move in circles, unseen. Whispers turned to questions, then to a low hum of recounting. Taza himself pushed forward by his mother, the boy pointing at Elias with a mix of awe and recognition. "The water man, he pulled me from the river's mouth." Nietzsche's shoulders, rigid as lodgepoles, eased imperceptibly. He turned to his daughter, searching her face for deceit, but found only truth, bright as the morning star. Yet the moment teetered, fragile as a spider's thread. Old wounds festered deep, mercy was not easily granted in a land scarred by iron and fire. A burly warrior, scarred from battles with Mexican lancers, stepped forward, his voice gravelly with doubt. "One act does not erase the shadow of many. What if he brings the soldiers here, trailing like coyotes after a kill?" Murmurs of agreement swelled, the tide of judgment threatening to surge anew. Elias felt the rawhide tighten, his pulse a war drum in his ears. He met Awinida's gaze, saw the plea there, not for his life alone, but for something greater, a mending of the frayed fabric between worlds. It was then that the unexpected turned, a profound realization dawning not just on Elias, but rippling through the assembly like dawn's first light. Awinida raised her chin, her voice gaining strength, laced with the quiet authority of one who had stared down death. "Father, hear me. This man did not ask for thanks that day. He rode into danger for a child he did not know, of a people he feared as much as we fear his. In his eyes, I saw not the conqueror, but the father, grieving, alone, extending a hand across the flood. If we spill his blood now, we drown not just him, but the spark of humanity that binds us all. The Great Spirit does not measure by skin or tongue, but by the heart's hidden rivers." Her words struck like lightning, illuminating truths long buried under layers of resentment. Elias, listening, felt a dam break within him. For the first time since Sarah's grave, he saw not his isolation, but connection, a thread of selflessness woven through strangers' lives. He thought of the Apache boy, Taza, whose white eyes mirrored Tommy's, and realized that in saving him, Elias had salvaged a piece of his own shattered soul. The tribe, too, stirred with recognition, memories of white traders who shared tobacco without demand, of soldiers who turned blind eyes to hidden camps. Not all were enemies. Humanity's power lay in those overlooked mercies, the quiet acts that defied the divide. Nietzsche stood motionless, the weight of leadership pressing like the mountain above. His gaze drifted to Awinida, pride mingling with the ache of a father who knew the cost of compassion in turbulent times. Then, slowly, he extended a hand to Elias, the guards stepping back as if released by an unspoken command. "Rise, water man," the chief said, his tone rough but laced with newfound respect. "The circle turns. You have given life. Now, receive it." The rawhide fell away, and Elias stood on trembling legs, the camp erupting in a chorus of voices, some wary, others warm, all threaded with possibility. But the night was not yet done with its transformations. As the fires burned low, Awinida led Elias to the chief's teepee, where Nietzsche waited with a pipe of sacred tobacco. The three sat in the glow of embers, the smoke curling upward in lazy spirals, carrying prayers to the star ancestors. Elias spoke haltingly of his losses, of the endless trail that had led him here, not as an invader, but as a seeker of solace. Nietzsche listened, his face a mask cracking to reveal the man beneath, the widower himself, his first wife taken by cholera in the reservation years. "We are all wanderers in the desert of grief," the chief murmured, passing the pipe. In that shared silence, bonds formed, fragile as new shoots but rooted deep. Word of the mercy spread through the camp like wildfire on dry grass. Children approached Elias shyly, offering bits of fry bread wrapped in corn husks, their laughter a balm to his weary spirit. Taza shadowed him, chattering in a mix of Apache and broken English, demonstrating how he now swam the arroyos with the confidence of one reborn. Even the doubting warrior, after a long pull from the peace pipe, clapped Elias on the shoulder, grunting, "Next flood, we ride together." Awinida watched from afar, her heart swelling with a quiet joy she hadn't known since her mother's passing. In Elias, she saw not just a savior, but a mirror to her own unspoken longings, for a world where kindness bridged canyons wider than any river. As dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of rose and saffron, the emotional climax crested like a wave held too long at bay. The tribe gathered at the valley's mouth, where Elias's mare had been recaptured and returned, her coat brushed to a shine by young hands. Nietzsche stepped forward, his voice booming across the assembly. "This man, once judged, now walks free, not as guest, but kin. But freedom alone is a hollow gift. Elias Kane, you carry the weight of your people's sins, as we carry ours. Will you aid us, as we aid you?" Elias hesitated, the cold at his hips suddenly foreign, a relic of division. Then, looking to Awinida, whose eyes held the steady light of trust, he unbuckled the holster and laid it at the chief's feet. "I will," he vowed, his voice steady for the first time in moons. "Not with guns, but with hands open. Teach me your ways of the land, and I'll share what little I know of the trails beyond." The act of surrender, of laying down arms not in defeat, but in generosity, ignited the spark. Cheers rose, mingling with chants to the morning star, and in that moment, compassion bloomed transformative. Elias knelt, accepting a beaded armband from Awinida's hands, its pattern of interlocking feathers symbolizing unity. The tribe encircled them, voices rising in harmony, a song of healing that echoed off the cliffs. For Elias, it was redemption, a lifeline pulled from his own flood of despair. For the Apache, it was hope, a reminder that selflessness could rewrite fates etched in blood. Days blurred into weeks, the valley becoming a crucible of shared labors. Elias learned to weave baskets from yucca, to track game by the whisper of wind in the grass, his calloused hands adapting to tools of sinew and stone. In return, he sketched maps of safe passes through the Sierra Madres, warning of army patrols and offering stories of distant rivers teeming with salmon. Awenida became his guide, her laughter a melody that chased shadows from his dreams. One evening, as they sat by a stream, polishing arrowheads under the gibbous moon, she spoke of her fears, the encroaching railroads, the vanishing buffalo, the erosion of traditions like sand through fingers. "We fight to survive," she said softly, "but survival without heart is just enduring." Elias nodded, tracing the scar on her arm with a gentle finger, the same one that mirrored the faint mark on his palm from hauling Taza free. "I thought I was enduring too, after Sarah and Tommy, but you showed me, kindness isn't a weakness. It's the root that holds the tree in storm." Their hands met, tentative as fawns at water's edge, and in that touch, a profound realization settled. Humanity's power lay not in conquest, but in these quiet intersections, where one soul's generosity watered another's drought-stricken spirit. Unexpected turns came softly, like rain in monsoon season. One dawn, scouts returned with news of a cavalry patrol probing the borders, their bugles a harbinger of raids. Panic flickered through the camp, but Elias, drawing on memories of frontier skirmishes, proposed a ruse, herding decoy mustangs to draw the soldiers into a box canyon, where Apache archers could turn them back without bloodshed. Nitsch agreed, and under cover of dusk, the plan unfolded. Elias rode at the fore, his voice a steady call to the ponies, leading the bluecoats on a merry chase while Awenida and the warriors flanked unseen. Arrows sang not to kill, but to warn, embedding in saddles and wagon wheels, forcing retreat with tails tucked and egos bruised. The victory was bloodless, a testament to cunning over cruelty, and the tribe's respect for Elias deepened into brotherhood. Taza, ever the shadow, gifted him a small bow carved from cedar, whispering, "Now you're one of us, water man." Even Nitsch, in private moments by the fire, shared tales of his youth, raids not born of hate, but necessity, and the rare truces forged over shared smokes with Comanche foes. "We are all children of the same sun," the chief reflected, his eyes distant. "It is the darkness we choose that divides us." As autumn winds carried the scent of ripening mesquite, Elias faced another turning point, one that tested the mettle of his newfound kin. Word arrived via a wandering Navajo trader. Elias's old homestead in Texas had been claimed by kin, a letter awaiting him in Santa Fe with deeds to the plot and a modest inheritance, enough to start anew, to build a life beyond the wanderings. Temptation gnawed at him, visions of a cabin by a creek, fields golden with wheat, a chance to honor Sarah's memory in fertile soil rather than arid stone. He confided in Awenida during a solitary walk along the ridge, the valley sprawling below like a quilt of earth tones. "I could go back," he admitted, voice thick with conflict. "Plant roots, find peace in the familiar. But leaving here, it feels like abandoning the only family I've known since the fever." Awenida stopped, turning to face him, the wind tugging at her feather. Her eyes, deep pools of understanding, held no judgment, only the gentle prod of truth. "Peace isn't a place, Elias. It's the choice to water the seeds where they fall. You've given us your strength. Now, what does your heart ask in return?" The question hung, profound as the canyon's echo, forcing him to confront the selflessness blooming within, a realization that true generosity demanded not sacrifice, but presence, the daily act of showing up for others as they had for him. That night, under a canopy of stars thick as scattered seeds, Elias made his choice. He burned the letter's proxy in the council fire, ashes swirling upward like released burdens. Nitsch watched, nodding approval, and the tribe marked the moment with a feast. Venison roasted over piñon, corn mush sweetened with wild honey, songs that wove tales of heroes who chose heart over horizon. Awenida's hand found his in the shadows, a silent vow, and for the first time, Elias laughed freely, the sound mingling with the crackle of flames, a harmony of healing. Winter crept in on paws of frost, blanketing the valley in rare snow that glittered like crushed quartz. The cold tested them, game scarce and winds howling through passes like mournful spirits. Elias's knowledge of settler traps proved invaluable. Snares baited with sagebrush luring rabbits from burrows, lean-tos reinforced with his rope canvas shielding tippus from gales. In quieter hours, he taught Taza to read the trader's English scrawls, the boy's finger tracing letters with wonder. S-O-N, Taza spelled, grinning. Like the sun that warms us. Elias's throat tightened. In the child, he reclaimed echoes of Tommy, selflessness turning loss to legacy. One blizzard eve, as flakes danced like feathers from the Creator's wing, Awinita fell ill, a cough that rattled her frame, born of chilled lungs from a scouting run. The medicine man chanted over her, smudging sage to drive out spirits, but fever held fast. Elias sat vigil, bathing her brow with snow melt, his hands steady despite the terror clawing his chest. Memories of Sarah's sickbed flooded him, the helplessness, the prayers whispered to indifferent heavens. But here, in this teepee aglow with tallow lamps, he found strength in community. Nige paced outside, his silhouette a sentinel, while women brought poultices of willow bark, their murmurs a lullaby of solidarity. As dawn broke, gray and hesitant, Awinita stirred, her eyes fluttering open to meet Elias's. "You stayed," she whispered, voice hoarse but warm. He brushed a damp strand from her forehead, the gesture intimate as a heartbeat. "Where else would I be? You've changed everything for me." Those 4 words, that truth. "Now, let me return it." In her recovery, the climax of compassion crested anew. Elias foraged deep into the storm-swept canyons, unearthing a hidden cache of dried chokecherries known only from his wanderings, their tart juice a tonic that eased her cough. The act, small yet profound, wove tighter the threads of their bond, transforming individual survival into collective grace. Spring returned triumphant, wildflowers exploding in riots of color, paintbrush red as cardinal wings, lupine purple as twilight skies. The tribe's herds fattened on new grass, and with them, hopes swelled. Elias and Awinita's courtship unfolded like a river finding its course, stolen glances during communal hunts, hands brushing over shared looms, stories exchanged under cottonwood shade. Nige observed with a father's wary blessing, seeing in Elias the selflessness that mirrored his own youth's ideals. One golden afternoon, by the same stream where Taza had nearly drowned, Elias knelt before Awinita, a ring fashioned from twisted silver and turquoise held forth. "Marry me," he said, voice rough with emotion, "not to claim you, but to walk beside, to build a life where kindness is our compass." Tears traced paths down her cheeks, joyful as summer rain. Yes, she breathed, and their embrace sealed a union that bridged worlds, Apache and cowboy, ancient and new, bound by humanity's unyielding light. The wedding was a tapestry of traditions. Niche's blessings in the old tongue, Elias's vows sworn on Sarah's locket, dances that swirled under stars until feet ached and hearts soared. Taza strewed petals of desert marigold, diggling as elders shared body jests, the night alive with the power of togetherness. Years folded like the wings of a resting eagle. Elias and Awinita's home rose on the valley's edge, a sturdy adobe fused with teepee frames, symbol of blended lives. Their daughter, born under a harvest moon and named Saria after lost mothers, toddled through the camp, her laughter a bridge for weary hearts. Taza grew tall, a warrior with a scholar's mind, trading pelts for books in far towns, his English laced with Apache proverbs. Even the scarred warrior, now an uncle figure, taught Elias the bow, their arrows finding targets side by side. Challenges came, as they do to all, droughts that cracked the earth, whispers of relocation orders from distant capitals. But each trial forged them stronger, acts of generosity their shield, Elias bartering with Mormon settlers for seed corn, Awinita mediating with Navajo kin for shared grazing rights. In one fierce summer, when locusts stripped the fields bare, the tribe pooled what little remained, each family contributing a measure of meal, a string of jerky, until none went hungry. Elias, remembering his empty cupboards after the fever, organized a caravan to the Gila River, returning with wild rice and tales of alliances forged over campfires. Through it all, the 4 words echoed, Awinita's voice a lodestar, "He saved my brother." They became legend in the valley, retold around fires to wide-eyed young ones, a parable of how one moment of selflessness could cascade into rivers of change. Elias, braying at the temples, often sat with Nige on the ridge, pipes blowing as they watched eagles soar. "I came as a stranger," Elias would say, judged and found wanting. "But kindness, it's the real frontier, untamed and endless." Nige would chuckle, deep and resonant, and we, who judged, were schooled by a fawn's wisdom. The Great Spirit smiles on such lessons. As Elias's life waned, like autumn leaves drifting to earth, the valley gathered one last time. He lay in the adobe, surrounded by kin, Saria at his side, her hand in his, Taza reciting verses from a worn Bible traded long ago, Awinita's fingers tracing the scar on his palm. "You changed everything," she whispered, tears glistening. "Not just for us, but for me. In your selflessness, I found my own." Elias smiled, breath shallow but eyes bright. "We all did, love, kindness. It's the spark that lights the dark. Carry it forward." His last exhale was peaceful, a sigh released to the winds, his spirit joining the ancestors under the vast Apache sky. The tribe mourned with songs that climbed the cliffs, but joy tempered the grief, a celebration of a life that embodied humanity's quiet power. Awinita planted a young mesquite by his grave, its roots to draw deep from hidden waters, a living testament. Years later, Saria, now a woman with her mother's fire and father's steadiness, would bring her own children to the tree, recounting the tale of a cowboy judged by warriors of 4 words. That turned judgment to justice, of compassion's cascade that watered deserts of the soul. And in that story, passed from lip to ear across generations, listeners, from dusty ranch hands in Texas saloons to urban dreamers in New York tenements, found resonance. For in every heart beats the potential for such transformation, a single act of generosity, unexpected as dawn, profound as stars, reminding us that we are all kin under the same sun. In a world quick to divide, let kindness be the 4 words that change everything, bridging chasms, healing wounds, igniting hope eternal. For in selflessness, we discover not just survival, but the true song of being human, uplifting, unbreakable, forever reaching toward the light.